behalf of Independents for Change.
Well, Taoiseach, I hope a deal is done, and I hope it means that a general election is imminent, because there are so many issues that are not benefiting from the present arrangements. And I want to deal with one, which is that of child protection. Now, as you know, over the weekend, Oireachtas was again in the news with the revelation of the real reason why the Golson-Hardwicke operational review, concluded almost 2 years ago, has never been published. Now, let's remember why this was commissioned in the first place. A whole number of serious incidents, a virtual riot by the young people, a major fire, €3.5 million worth of damage, strike action, health and safety concerns, behavioural management concerns. And it's worth pointing out that subsequent to the non-publication of this report, there were further serious incidents last year, including one which required the calling of the armed Gardaí, while this year, presently in the courts, we have High Court proceedings underway into the unlawful use of restraints and solitary confinement. And all of this in a facility which deals with the state's most vulnerable and troubled young people, over half of whom have lost one or both parents, 42% at serious risk, drug and drink problems, not going to school, in care and so on. So it's hardly surprising that the authors of the report said that they had grave concerns about what they learned, and that it was in the public interest that the report should be published. And I have to say there's a sad irony that the Minister for Children justified non-publication on the grounds that she hadn't been convinced that fair procedures had applied. But fair procedures to who? It certainly wasn't fair to the children, many of whom got extended prison sentences of up to 5 years for their role in the disturbance, that the report of the circumstances leading up to the incident had not been published. It wasn't fair to Golson and Hardwicke, consummate professionals who checked and rechecked, who to this day haven't been given legal information as to why the report hasn't been published. And I have to say, if they were academics based in Ireland, they wouldn't be treated like this. Instead, the beneficiaries of the fairness were the board and some of the staff in Oireachtas, who threatened legal action and resignation. And they got away with it. They succeeded in intimidating the Department of Children. In other words, those responsible for the operation that was being reviewed blocked its publication. Sadly, this is not an isolated incident. This week, there was also revealed to me, we learned of the non-publication of another report involving very serious child protection concerns involving social work services in the Midlands. Taoiseach, I suppose my questions are quite straightforward. Can you give us an assurance that this review, commissioned for publication, will be published? And more importantly, I think, what are you going to do about the fact that there are now not one but two major organisations under the aegis of the Department of Children who, it looks like, are incredibly comfortable at giving the Minister and the Department the two fingers to carry on doing whatever they like, and sadly these two organisations are the ones that are charged with protecting our most vulnerable children. The report I referred to that was mentioned earlier in the week that we found out mightn't be published involved one young person in a serious harm situation where social workers had been notified over a period of 10 years.
Thank you, Deputy. Taoiseach.
Thanks very much, Deputy. As I think everyone in the House would appreciate, Oireachtas works with and serves children who have very profound difficulties, children who've had a very bad start in life, children who have immense needs, great difficulties, children who are very often, sadly, a risk themselves and also risks to other people, their families and their communities. It's a very hard area to work in, and the staff who do work in that area, generally speaking, are very dedicated and have a vocation to work with children with such enormous and difficult needs. Several reports have been published, both outlining the reforms that are required at Oireachtas, and also recommendations from these reports have been published and incorporated into the overall reform plan. And this reform plan is being limited. The Minister has the Board's legal advice with regard to this, and that has been accepted. And I'm sure in the course of this debate and perhaps another opportunity, Minister Pone will be able to answer your questions in a little bit more detail than I can now.
The brevity of your answer is an insult to the vulnerable children currently in the charge of our child protection services. The second report that I referred to in my opening remarks was concluded in 2016. So serious are the allegations that the Gardaí are investigating on grounds of reckless endangerment. And we have a strong belief now that that report will not be published. The recommendations that you refer to, the very professional people who carried out a review on a contractual basis that the review into Oberstown would be published, have not been given any legal reason as to why the report cannot be published. If there is a legal reason and redactions are necessary, why can that not be? The reality is, Taoiseach, that as of today, even though there have been improvements in Oberstown, let's face it, couldn't really get much worse considering the problems they had been through, is that in HICWA reports this year, just completed, there were 38 child protection and welfare concerns, of which none were concluded, a number of which were not even informed, given an acknowledgement to the person who made the complaint. And as I said, these are children who are suspected of abuse. Some of the allegations actually were against staff in the facility itself. And we don't know if those staff and the ones referred to in the correspondence that has been leaked or given out under FOIs are still working there and being a threat potentially to vulnerable children. So I'm sorry, and I know you have bigger fish to fry today, but I think your answer was a little bit disrespectful to those at the heart of these matters.
I think, as the Deputy rightly says, these allegations are very serious and they are being investigated by the Gardaí. And I think it's important that we allow the Gardaí to carry out those investigations and that we support the Gardaí in their work in that regard. And if it comes to publishing any reports, and I haven't seen these reports, but when it comes to publishing any reports, we always have to have regard to the risk that the publication of such reports could prejudice an investigation and could make future criminal prosecutions more difficult. So that always has to be borne in mind. The board has communicated with the authors of the report to answer the Deputy's questions. In relation to the issue more broadly, I want to reassure the House that the Government is absolutely committed to improving child protection in Ireland. We've established a Department for Children and Youth Affairs with a dedicated minister at the Cabinet table. We've amended our Constitution to enshrine the rights of children in our Constitution, put children first, for example, on a statutory footing, and just last year introduced successfully, after many years, mandatory reporting of child abuse. So a lot of progress is being made in this area, but that is not for a second to diminish in any way the seriousness of the issues at Oberstown, which the Deputy rightly raises.
Thank you very much.